Yep. So in .NET framework, first of all, how .NET came into the existence? Okay, what were the the scenarios that we had to use .NET? So first of all, if I take an example, initially we used to have a programming language that is known as assembly programming language, right? So I think you have heard of that particular language, assembly programming language. It was way back in 1960s. So if I talk about assembly programming language, so it was very complex and it was very difficult to understand also, because the syntax was not user friendly, as we say. So then we uh, basically were using another language that was named as basic. So first of all, it has been started from assembly, then the basic language, that's beginner or purpose symbolic instruction code. So that language basically came into the existence, and here the main benefit in that particular language was that we can create a program, okay, no, not because of uh, using the complex syntax, okay, but just using the basic input output statements. So it was less contained the less complexity as compared with the assembly programming language. But again, there was some limitation in basic programming language. So in basic programming language, the limitation was that we cannot reuse the code, right? So let's say today that the functionality that is known as functions, okay, that was not there in the basic programming language. All right. Yeah. So after that, a new language came into the market that is called as C. So in C programming language, we were having that concept that is known as the functions, right, or the procedures, as we say. But again, as the time progressed, so there were a lot of types of application that needs to be created, but it was not supported by C. For example, if I talk about the next language that came into the existence, that is called C++. That is a programming language that contains the feature of OOPS. So what is basically OOPS? OOPS is object-oriented programming structure. Okay, that is basically a methodology that to create applications. Right. So in C++, we basically used to have that concept that is known as like inheritance or abstraction, encapsulation. We are going to discuss that further, but for the timing, I'm just explaining that what were the benefit in C++ if I compare it with C. So after that, you know, a lot of devices came into the market. For example, like mobile phones or internet also came. Then tab, or the laptops, all these kind of devices basically came. So in C++, we used to have this functionality only, that we can create the program for a particular machine only. But for example, if we have a lot of kind of machines, like I talked about, like laptop, tab and all these things, then how we are going to create the programs for them? So in order to do that, some new languages came into the market. For example, like if I compared it with like Python or Java, right? But again, there were two, three things missing in these programming languages. That is that we don't have actually a complete package where we can create, or where we can deploy, or where we can test the applications. For example, if I have created a mobile application, let's say, or if I have created an application that is called, let's say, accounting software. So that software, for the source code, I can create in, like for example, in Java, right? But if in order to deploy, if in order to create the setup of that particular accounting software, and so that I can give it to the client, so in order to deploy that, I need to use some other framework, some other technology, let's say, to deploy the project, right? Same, in order to test the project, I have to again go to some different tool in order to test that application. So .NET realized this particular fact, and then .NET basically Microsoft introduces that framework that is called .NET, in which we can so what are the benefits basically we have in the .NET framework? So in .NET framework, we have, first feature is that we can design, deploy and test the applications. Okay, so first thing first, that it's basically a complete package, one-stop solution of regarding any kind of functionality depending on the application. For example, we can design, we can deploy, we can test the application on the same platform, on the same framework, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Second thing is that there are some coders, okay, that needs to interact with multiple applications. For example, when all these devices came into the market, like tab or phones and laptops and all, so a lot of different type of application was also a requirement. For example, mobile application or desktop application or Windows application or web application or cloud application. So all these kind of application we can create in the .NET framework, right? So multiple types of application can be created on .NET framework. Okay. So there are two benefits in .NET framework. First of all, then third benefit is that it's a unique feature of .NET framework that we can have uh, multiple languages support in .NET framework. For example, if there is a project, okay, that is known as, let's say, student management software. Let's say you are creating a software that is called student management software, and we have several modules regarding that. For example, we have like login module, we have let's say registration module, we have accounts information module, and several other modules. So now uh, it's basically a possible uh, opportunity is there, like we can create login module in C Sharp, registration module in C++, then accounting module in J Sharp, that is known as basically the Java support for in the .NET framework, and some other module we can create in VB. And when we combine all these modules, so as a project it will run, right? Okay. So that is known as basically multilingual support in .NET framework. So how it's going to process, or how it is possible that we can combine the code of multiple languages into a single project, that I'm going to explain next. But uh, for the time being, I'm just writing over here that multilingual support in framework. Okay, so these three are the major features of .NET framework. Because of all these features, .NET is still alive. I mean, they recently launched their 2015 version, right? So because these three are basically the feature that actually allow developers to create application onto that. So next I'm going to explain what is basically the .NET architecture is like. So
Okay.
first of all, if I talk about the .NET architecture, so in .NET architecture we have first component as CLR. So that CLR is basically known as your common language runtime. Okay.
Okay.
So what this common language runtime actually means is that common language runtime is actually the backbone of the .NET framework. So when I say it's a backbone, means it handles a lot of tasks. Okay, so in order to understand the working of CLR, we first of all have to understand how the .NET program is basically compiled onto your system. So first of all, whatever your program source language is, means it could be C++, it could be Visual Basic, it could be C Sharp. Okay, first of all, whatever your source code is, that will get converted into the MSIL, that is called Microsoft Intermediate Language, or you can simply say IL code. Okay, that is basically not a machine code, not a source language code. It's somewhere in the middle, but that is a standard format that every source code will get converted into. So, like if I write it over here, first of all, the source code gets compiled into the MSIL code, and then through this MSIL code, the machine code will be generated. Okay.
Okay.
So, why we need to basically convert that source code into MSIL? I mean, it's quite understood that it will take a longer time. Like if we convert the source code into MSIL, then MSIL to machine code, So what do you think? Why the source code is getting converted into MSIL? Why not directly machine code?
Um, the machine code doesn't understand the source code. It's
Yeah, means the source code should be converted into machine code. That is for sure, because otherwise, how the machine is going to understand whatever the code is. But why it is, first of all, .NET converts source code into MSIL. That's Microsoft Intermediate Language, and then from MSIL to machine code. I mean, why? It's not directly converting the source code into machine code. What could be the possible reason, according to you?
um, I mean, the machine code only understands zeros and ones. It doesn't have any meaning to what we're typing, so we have to give meaning to that.
Okay. So let me explain that. Why it is converting the source code into MSIL, just because, let's say, source code here in the .NET, if I talk about the third feature that I've just explained, that's called multilingual support. So in multilingual support, we have basically multiple languages. Okay, the source code is basically defined in multiple languages, and then
Yeah,
that source code needs to be converted into machine code. But there is one problem, that if the source code is in the multiple languages, then let's say a variable, let's say in the Visual Basic, needs to interact with the variable of, let's say, the C sharp language, or let's say one object that you have created in C sharp needs to be interacted with the object that is basically in the Visual Basic. So how these objects are going to understand each other, because they belong to some different territory, they belong to some
yeah,
different languages, right? So in order to make them work, first of all, the entire source code needs to be converted into a common format, right? So once it is basically in the common format, then we can convert into the machine code, right? So data, or rather source code from different sources, different languages, first of all needs to convert it into a common uh, format that is known as your MSIL, that is Microsoft Intermediate Language. And then from this MSIL, it will be easy for the compiler to convert this particular code to machine code, right?
yeah,
So am I clear?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So the source code, first of all the source code needs to be converted into MSIL, and then all this particular MSIL needs to be converted into machine code. But how this source code is getting converted into MSIL? So CLR is basically responsible for that. So if I talk about CLR, CLR basically responsible to convert the source code into MSIL format. Okay. Then it's not only handling this particular task, but let's say if there is a source code, okay, and there is a problem that is regarding the memory issue that is known as your garbage collection. So do you know what is garbage collection? Okay, so garbage collection is basically a process where, let's say, if I talk about a very big application in which a lot of objects are getting created of certain classes, and then you have done with the processing, but still that those objects contains the memory, right? So ultimately it is going to be a shortfall whenever some heavy memory is required, right? So
Yeah.
garbage collection is basically a process where compiler just free all these memories that are not more in use. So it basically help to clear the memory, so that whenever there is a requirement, so there should not be a shortfall of the memory. So this process is
Yeah.
known as garbage collection. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so CLR handles the process of garbage collection. What used to do basically in different languages like C++ and all, the garbage collection process needs to be initiated by the developer only. But CLR will automatically collect the information about all these memory spaces, and then free them, okay, according to itself. So CLR
Yeah.
also handles the process that is known as your garbage collection. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. So now, so we have converted, let's say, from source code to MSIL code from using CLR. But in order to generate the machine code according to a particular machine, we need another compiler that is known as JIT compiler. So JIT is known as just-in-time compiler. So let me write it over here. Let's say JIT, and JIT basically convert from MSIL to machine code, and CLR basically handles source code to MSIL. Okay. So this JIT compiler is known as the just-in-time compiler. So why the name is just-in-time? So just-in-time means that let's say if you have 10 functions, okay, and right now only 2 functions are required to be processed. So just-in-time means that it will not completely convert the MSIL of all these 10 functions to machine code. It will just convert those 2 functions only to the machine code. Why? Because only these 2 functions are required right now. So if it will convert like all the 10 functions in advance, so it may be, it could be a performance issue regarding the memory. So that's why just in time means that whenever the time is, then only the certain particular functions needs to be converted into a machine code, right? Yeah. So JIT is basically handling the task from MSIL to machine code, but who calls the JIT compiler? So CLR is the responsible to call the JIT compiler so that the MSIL can be converted into the machine code. Okay. So
Yeah.
ultimately CLR works like a manager here. CLR manages each and everything, right?
Okay.
Okay. So till now we have just discussed only one part of the dotted architecture, that is known as CLR. Okay. So I think am I clear with the CLR?